The Bufflebo. Deep in the heart of Wobblewood Forest, where the trees swayed like they were dancing and the streams giggled as they flowed, lived a creature as mysterious as he was clumsy. His name was the Bufflebo. The Bufflebo was no ordinary forest creature. He had enormous fuzzy ears that flopped when he ran, a long snout perfect for sniffing out snacks, and feet so big they seemed to belong to a completely different creature. His fur was a patchwork of bright green and orange, and his tail had a mind of its own, often knocking over whatever he passed. The other animals in the forest had only heard rumors about him. They said he was as big as a boulder, could roar like a thunderstorm, and had a taste for sandwiches, especially ones left unattended. One sunny day, a clever little squirrel named Pip decided to go on an adventure. Pip loved to explore, but he also loved telling stories, and what better story to tell than meeting the legendary Bufflebo? Pip packed his explorer's kit, which included a magnifying glass, a map of Wobblewood, and a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in leaves. "You'll never find the Bufflebo," laughed Willow the owl as she perched above him. "He's probably just a made-up tale." But Pip wasn't deterred. He marched into the forest, following the trail of squashed mushrooms and wobbly footprints. Meeting the Bufflebo, it wasn't long before Pip heard a curious sound. Crash! Thud! Oops! Pip peeked around a tree and saw a truly extraordinary sight. The Bufflebo was trying to balance a tower of apples on his nose, but every time he added a new one, the whole stack tumbled to the ground. "Excuse me," Pip said, trying to sound braver than he felt. "Are you the Bufflebo?" The Bufflebo turned around, startled. His floppy ears twitched, and his enormous eyes grew even wider. "Who's asking?" he said, his voice deep but kind. "I'm Pip," the squirrel said, stepping forward. "I've heard so many stories about you, and I wanted to see if they were true. Is it true you're as big as a boulder?" The Bufflebo laughed, a sound like a rolling drum. "Only if the boulder is having a bad fur day." "And can you roar like a thunderstorm?" Pip asked. The Bufflebo thought for a moment. Then he let out a roar so loud that it startled a flock of birds from the trees. But halfway through, he hiccuped, and the roar turned into a squeaky giggle. Pip couldn't help but laugh. "And do you eat sandwiches?" Pip asked, holding up his peanut butter one. "Only if they've got peanut butter," the Bufflebo said, licking his snout. A day with the Bufflebo and Pip quickly became friends. Pip followed the Bufflebo as he showed him all the best spots in Wobblewood, the giggleberry bushes, where berries popped and made silly noises when picked, the slippery slide rock, a smooth boulder perfect for sliding, and the Wobblewood lagoon, where the Bufflebo liked to practice his cannonball jumps. But not everyone in the forest was thrilled about the Bufflebo. "He's too clumsy," grumbled Myrtle the hedgehog. "He's always knocking over my mushroom garden. And his tail ruined my web," complained Spinner the spider. The animals decided to confront the Bufflebo. They gathered near the giggleberry bushes, where Pip and the Bufflebo were snacking on berries. "Bufflebo," Willow the owl began, "you're a lovely creature, but you're a bit disruptive." The Bufflebo's ears drooped. "I don't mean to be," he said. "It's just my tail has a mind of its own, and my feet are so big, and you're wonderful just the way you are." Pip interrupted. "Sure, the Bufflebo is clumsy, but he's also kind and fun and makes the forest a better place. Who else can make everyone laugh just by trying to stack apples?" The animals murmured among themselves. They had to admit Pip was right. The forest wouldn't be the same without the Bufflebo's big heart and even bigger blunders. A celebration for the Bufflebo. To show their appreciation, the animals decided to throw a party for the Bufflebo. They decorated the Wobblewood Lagoon with ribbons and flowers and made all kinds of sandwiches. The Bufflebo was overjoyed. He danced so enthusiastically that his tail knocked over the sandwich table, but everyone just laughed and helped him pick it up. From that day on, the Bufflebo was no longer just a mysterious creature of Wobblewood Forest. He was their friend, their neighbor, and the heart of all their funniest and most unforgettable adventures. And if you ever visit Wobblewood, just follow the trail of squashed mushrooms and giggles. You might just find the Bufflebo trying to stack apples, and maybe even share a peanut butter sandwich with him.